Come on in, honey. The lantern's lit, the veil's a little thin, and the wind's been dying to carry a few secrets your way. Welcome to Raven's Ramblings, where the shadows walk beside us and the past never stays buried, and a good spell can speak louder than a sermon. I'm Raven Nightingale, part healer, part hellraiser, keeper of the old ways and ghost stories alike. So pull up a chair and listen close. You never know what might be whispering in the dark. Welcome back, little witches, to Raven's Ramblings. What is my hair doing here? Okay, that's good enough. Anyway, I'm Raven. Hi, your semi-mentally unstable host. How y'all doing? Today we're going to talk about something I think most witches eventually will run into. All right, I know I have numerous times. We're going to talk about the pile. You know that pile, that drawer of half-used candles or herbs from 2020 that are now spiritually and physically expired, the tiny random bottles that you bought because your brain went, yes, spell bottle, spell jar, potion, so forth. Perfect for it. Or the tarot deck that you swore you were going to connect to deeply with your soul, but instead just kind of sits there and judges you from across the room. Yeah. And somehow, and I still have not figured this out yet, somehow the majority, I'm going to say a good 98% of us, end up with 17 notebooks and 12 different spell jars and moon water from moons we don't remember because we forgot to label the bottle, three different pendulums, none of which feel right, one emotionally suspicious feather. Yeah, I might have a couple of those, and probably enough rosemary to season an entire medieval village. And eventually, you look at all of it and realize that your altar has slowly started looking, well, less like a sacred space and more like a witchy haunted craft store exploded. Don't judge. So, today we're going to talk about what to do with those witchy supplies that you don't want anymore or that you don't connect to anymore. How to let go of spiritual clutter without feeling guilty, and why getting rid of stuff does not mean that you are less of a witch. It really doesn't. Don't fall into that. Because honestly, sometimes growth, and we should always be growing, sometimes that growth looks like a cleanse. Yeah. Sometimes it looks like standing in your altar room at 1 a.m. holding an old spell jar going, why do I still have this crap? Why? Why do I have this? Now, before we start, disclaimer on this, I am not telling anyone how to practice. If you want all that, fabulous. And my little chaos witch heart loves the clutter sometimes. But sometimes I get in those weird moods where I'm like, nope, this is all got to go. And these are just my opinions because like I said, I don't want to tell anyone how to practice. So take what resonates and leave what doesn't. And maybe don't throw glass spell jars into the woods because the forest creatures are already dealing with enough shit. All right, let's get into it. I think, yeah, one of the weirdest things about witchcraft is how emotional objects become. And it could just be random stuff. To anyone else outside of your practice, it just looks like a regular candle or a necklace or a jar that you're recycling or a crystal or a dried flower. But to us, those things have energy and memory attached to them. You know, you remember why you bought it or what spell you used it for, maybe even who you were dating at the time, or like me, what mental breakdown you were having at that moment. What phase of your life you were trying to survive. And I think that's why it's hard to let things go because sometimes we're not actually attached to the object itself, but we're attached to the version of ourselves that was connected to it. And I am 100% guilty of this. Your girl, your girl holds on to some shit. I know. I'm working on it. Working on it. I'm constantly working on my issues. So I am guilty of this myself. And I have held on to witchy supplies for way too long because my brain turned them into emotional support clutter. Like, what if I need this weird candle someday? Maybe I need this twisted candle. And I have to be like, all right, Raven, this candle smells like dust and regret. Let it go. Throw it away. Whatever. Just, you don't need that. And social media, and I love me some social media, but holy shit, it makes some of this worse. It really does, because witchcraft online has become so tied to the aesthetic of it and buying all the things. Like, suddenly, everyone thinks that being spiritual means that you need 50 different crystals and imported herbs blessed under a blood moon by a forest cryptid. You don't. You really don't. You do not need 12 ornate chalices. You really don't. I mean, if you want them and that makes you happy, yeah, what ifs? You do not need a handcrafted altar table made from wood harvested by an emotionally available Viking. You don't. I mean, you can, but you don't have to have it. And honestly, all these things are just things because some of the strongest magic that people practice is literally just lighting a simple birthday candle in your kitchen or stirring that intention into your coffee. Or, this is my favorite because I love doing this, especially in the winter, sitting outside talking to the moon while wrapped up in a cozy blanket like a burrito. That one makes me happy a lot. You do not need an entire metaphysical home goods section in your house to be a witch. Some of it's cool. I like crap. I have a lot of crap. I have a lot of crap, y'all. So much stuff. But I love it. But I think some of us accidentally start collecting supplies instead of actually connecting spiritually. And at some point the altar starts looking less magical and more like evidence recovered from a crime scene because it's just so much. Now, how do you know when it is time to purge and to get rid of something? Okay. How do you really know? And honestly, your gut is already going to know. You look at it and feel, instead of connected, you feel tired or guilty or just heavy. Maybe it reminds you of a bad relationship or a painful time in your life or a practice that you outgrew or even a version of yourself that doesn't really fit anymore. And I think people kind of get scared to admit that their paths have changed and you have grown, but you should change and you should grow. I'm not the same witch I was 25 years ago. I'm not the same witch I was 5 years ago. Hell, I'm not even the same witch I was a year ago when I started this podcast. And thank the gods because honestly, some of my early spell work, y'all, the 1900s were sketchy. My spell work was held together with caffeine and poor decisions. And that's kind of normal. And I still kind of do that on occasion. But you grow, you explore, you experiment and evolve. And sometimes buying those tools actually do help you. They genuinely do. They help guide you and make you feel in the moment. But sometimes you buy them because your brain saw a pretty TikTok with dramatic music and you said, yes, this wooden spoon will heal me emotionally. It will not. It's just a spoon. It's a beautiful spoon, but still a spoon. Okay. Now let's talk about what you can actually do with all this stuff that you may not want anymore or connect to anymore. First thing you're going to do, cleanse it. Even if you're just tossing it, just do a quick cleanse so your energy is not attached to it anymore. All right. Now, once you cleanse it, you can throw it away if you need to, but passing it on to maybe a newer witch or even an older witch who seems to connect with the thing, pass it on, but cleanse it first. And things like tarot decks and books and crystals and altar decor and candle holders, whatever supplies you don't use anymore, someone else may genuinely love them. So donate them, sell them. Some people sell their old stuff. Trade it with someone who has something else that you do connect with. Or, like I said, just give it to another witch. Yeah. But always cleanse. Cleanse first because and it's not because I think that your old oracle deck is possessed by some Victorian sorrow spirit. It's because your energy and intention matter, right? And it doesn't have to be a big elaborate cleanse. Just a quick smoke cleanse or sit it out in the moonlight. Knock on it 3 times and tell it, thank you for surviving my chaotic era. And then you're done. Mm, You have closure with that item. And all of that is totally acceptable. Now, some things can be repurposed, right? Look, a witch loves a good recycle. I'm just saying. Old jars, clean them, use them, reuse them, use them again. Now, it, now anything baneful, I don't personally reuse. Once it's baneful, it's baneful. It's one thing, one and done. But any other old jars, if you did a house cleansing or whatever, and you have an old jar with the stuff, and just clean it out and reuse it. Candle wax. This is a good one because we all have those little partial candles that are burned down to little stubs. Put them in a candle kit and melt it all down and make like a mishmash of a new candle. Do that with intention. Dried herbs. The dried herbs I have gotten rid of over the years. Mm, Dried herbs, you can just compost those. You really can. You can spread those out in a particular area of your yard and, say a blessing over it and thank the earth, that kind of stuff. Old fabric. So much fabric. You can turn those into tarot wraps or altar cloths or wall hangings or, something like that. Yeah. And go back to the old herbs. I love the composting the old herbs part because nature itself doesn't cling to those dead things forever. So it kind of gives us that cycle because it breaks those old herbs down and then turns them into something useful again. I really love that one. That one makes me happy. And of course, you have some of us who will keep a cracked candle holder for 10 years because the vibes were amazing once. I have like 3 or 4 brass candle holders that are probably 20 years older than I am, and I cannot seem to get rid of them. I hardly ever use them, but I'm like, they're really good candle holders. Why would I should just give them to I have a friend who is a newer witch. I should give them to her. Anyway, now personally, like I said, there are some things I'm never going to pass on to someone else. Okay? This is very important. Anything, like I said, heavy baneful work, no. Don't pass that on. Even with a good cleanse, mm, I still wouldn't pass that on. Anything connected to extreme grief, I would not pass that on because that is a very, very intense energy, and we don't want to pass that on to someone else. Or any just emotionally intense spell work. Any of those kind of things, I would probably dismantle privately. And no, it's not because I think all the objects are cursed or anything, but I do think that those objects can hold some very powerful emotional weight. And of course, if something feels spiritually wrong to keep moving around, trust yourself. Okay. You don't need permission to get rid of it. All right? Does that make sense? That felt a little bit random, but if it feels wrong, don't do it. If it feels okay to let go, do it. Trust yourself, trust your gut, trust your instincts and your own intention. Okay. Also, and I know I said this in the beginning, but we're going to reiterate. Please stop leaving spell jars in random public places. I'm begging, please. Number one, the earth does not need more broken glass covered in cinnamon. They really don't. Forest spirits are looking at us modern witches like, why are they trying to decorate everything with glitter and twine? Why? What are we doing? And secondly, on that, you don't want random people finding these things and then disturbing the energy or attaching their energy or that energy attaching to them. Don't be putting stuff out in random public places. And can we talk about unfinished projects? Y'all, mm, so much unfinished things because I know I can't be the only person with 3 or 4 half-finished grimoires or abandoned journals or herbal notes scattered across notebooks. Like I was cleaning out a cubby in my altar room and came across some kind of herbal notes that I made, and I'm like, I don't even know what this was for. What else do I have? Oh, craft supplies. The hyperfixation that I have for craft supplies that last about 4 business days, and then, well, I never touch it again. But listen to this carefully. An unfinished spiritual project does not mean that you failed. It really doesn't. It means you were trying, and that's it. Not every path is permanent. Not every interest lasts forever. And of course, not every tool is going to stay meaningful. Yeah. Like that Athame was amazing, but now I'm like, that kind of stuff. And I think some people kind of stay trapped in old versions of themselves because they're kind of scared to admit that they've changed. But your practice should breathe. It should evolve when you evolve. And sometimes your altar changes because you changed. That is not failure. That is being alive and growing as a person. Yeah. And that's amazing. So if you've been staring at a shelf full of witchy clutter, feeling overwhelmed, maybe this is your sign to clean it out. That's what I've been doing. Keep what still feels real to you, but release what doesn't. Make space in your life for what actually matters now. Yeah, it's important. And maybe while you're doing this cleansing, light a candle, put on some music, and let it become kind of a ritual instead of a chore. A quiet little acknowledgement that you have survived another version of yourself. And that is pretty damn magical. Thank you for hanging out with me in my chaotic brain tonight. I appreciate all of y'all listening, and please like and share and subscribe and all the good things. And those of you that have subscribed to my newsletter, thanks. I appreciate that. And I'm sorry that my I put on there several upcoming episodes, and I think I have changed them around a little bit. So those episodes that were on that list, they're still coming. I felt pulled to another direction before that one. Apparently, I know the best laid plans, right? Until next time, my dears, take care of yourself. Trust your intuition and maybe check your cabinets. I know some of us, me included, have some spell jars that are probably reproducing a whole new branch of fungus somewhere in the dark under there. Thanks, y'all. Bye.